Religion keeps insisting it owns morality. Yet the moment you compare its rules to basic human decency, the entire claim collapses on contact like wet paper. The contradiction is obvious. If divine law were perfect, you wouldn't need millions of believers quietly ignoring half of it just to function like normal adults. People don't reject cruel commandments because they're sinners. They reject them because they have a working conscience. That alone tells you which one is actually guiding moral behavior. Humans didn't outgrow religion because they became corrupt. They outgrew it because they finally noticed how often the holy laws fall below the standards of a halfway decent person with a functioning brain. Take any scripture that claims its rules come straight from the mind of a perfect being. You'd expect consistency, clarity, and maybe a hint of fairness. Instead, you get a mix of threats, impossible demands, and outdated tribal rules that any modern person would be ashamed to enforce. If these texts came from a god, that god is somehow less moral than the average teenager who knows hitting people is wrong without needing a commandment carved in stone. Look at the situations where humans behave better than the so-called divine law. It's not rare. It's constant. Start with punishment. Humans figured out that torture and eternal torment are barbaric, but divine law still praises them as justice. People realize that causing someone endless suffering doesn't fix anything. It just makes you cruel. Meanwhile, religious doctrine glorifies the idea of infinite punishment for finite mistakes. A human judge who tried that would be removed from the bench in 5 minutes. Yet believers call it holy because they've been trained not to question it. Then there's the issue of free thought. Humans understand that curiosity and questioning lead to progress. Divine law treats questioning as rebellion. People build schools and libraries. Religion threatens you for reading the wrong book. The human mind pushes forward. Divine authority tries to drag it backward. If one of these is moral, it's not the one banning questions. You also see it in equality. Humans figured out, slowly, painfully, that all people deserve the same rights. Divine law didn't get that memo. It divides people by gender, tribe, belief, or purity like some ancient sorting chart. If modern humans obeyed these rules, half the population would still be considered property. Yet people manage to climb out of that hole despite Scripture, not because of it. That alone exposes the failure of calling these texts moral guides. And consider responsibility. Humans know they must own their actions because no one else is coming to clean up the mess. Divine law encourages the opposite. Shift the blame, pray it away, hand everything to an invisible authority who supposedly wants obedience more than honesty. People solve problems by taking action. Divine law solves them by telling you to wait for help from someone who never shows up. Again, humans outperform the divine without even trying. Look at compassion. A decent human helps someone because they're suffering. Divine law often demands you check their beliefs first. If they're the wrong kind, too bad. A human sees a problem and steps in. Divine law draws boundaries and calls it righteousness. If a god can only be compassionate to people who flatter him correctly, that god has worse emotional stability than the average toddler. Then there's intellectual honesty. Humans eventually admit when they're wrong. Divine law can never do that because the moment it does, its authority evaporates. So believers have to bend reality until the contradictions look intentional. When a rule is cruel, they call it mysterious. When a claim is false, they call it symbolic. When a moral command is clearly outdated, they pretend it was never meant literally. People grow. Divine law can't, so it forces the believer to shrink instead. And look at progress. Humans update their ethics based on evidence, empathy, and real-world consequences. Divine law is stuck in whatever century its authors lived in. The only reason society is better today than in ancient times is because humans stopped letting Scripture dictate every decision. Every moral improvement in history came from people challenging divine rules, not obeying them. If divine morality were superior, progress would have slowed the moment religion gained power. Instead, progress stalled under it and accelerated the moment people pushed it aside. Even forgiveness shows the gap. Humans forgive because they understand context, motives, and growth. Divine law forgives based on loyalty. You can be a monster your entire life and still get a free pass if you say the right prayer at the right moment. Meanwhile, a genuinely good person can be damned for believing the wrong thing. That's not morality. That's a cosmic loyalty test, and people can see the difference even if they're scared to admit it. Lastly, look at the moral instinct. Humans naturally avoid harm because empathy evolved to keep communities alive. Divine law expects you to believe that you'd be savage without a threat hanging over your head. The idea that humans need divine permission to be good is not only wrong, it's insulting. People are good because they care about each other, not because they're trying to avoid punishment from a supernatural overseer with anger issues. The reality is simple. Humans have a higher moral standard than the divine laws they were taught to worship. People protect rights, build compassion, and question their own biases. Divine law protects authority, punishes curiosity, and clings to outdated rules written by people who didn't know where the sun went at night. The moment you stop pretending these rules came from a perfect being, everything makes sense. They look exactly like what they are, the opinions of ancient humans doing their best, but far from perfect. The only honest conclusion is this: morality didn't come from divine law, it survived divine law.